Are you ready to navigate the new way to work? Forbes Books presents Dare to Care in the Workplace with Kathleen Quinn Botaw. Here's Kathleen.
I'm happy to welcome Tamara Bray to the podcast. Tamara is Group Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer at DCP Midstream, a Fortune 500 natural gas company based in Denver, Colorado. Her wide range of duties include employee and organizational development, culture, talent management, employee relations, and so much more. Tamara, welcome to Dare to Care in the Workplace.
Thank you, Kathleen.
I was so excited for this because we worked together a little bit a couple years ago, and you are one of the most forward-thinking chief people officers I have ever met, and I'm delighted to get your perspective for our podcast members. So you've been involved in HR since your days back in Ford. Yeah. Tell me, what are a couple of the biggest changes you've seen in human resources in the past 30 years?
I would say the biggest changes I've observed is the movement of companies from traditional ways of thinking about work, like work schedules and flexibility. And that's been a big shift. And a lot of that shift has been driven by employee demand. More and more, the talent out there is sort of in the driver's seat. And the change has been that if organizations don't meet employee expectations in this really tight talent market, particularly around flexibility, then some other employer will provide that and they'll get the talent. And so it's been an interesting challenge in the shifting dynamics of sort of the employers being in the driver's seat versus the talent and the employees being in the driver's seat these days.
Completely agree. And how long do you think we're going to be in this pickle?
Only the shadow knows.
Well, a lot of the pundits out there, the economists and gurus who project and predict where we're going to be, say this talent scarcity issue is going to stay with us at least for the next 5 years. What do you think about that?
I think it is very likely that it will be with us for a while, although you wonder if recession looming will change those dynamics somewhat. So I think we'll just have to wait and see. And for those of us that are in the human resource profession, it'll just keep us on our toes.
Yes, I'd say tap dancing is actually where it will keep us all. So
Yes.
You mentioned that flexibility is a big shift. Can you tell me more about your definition of flexibility and what you're seeing out there when people in management positions and employees talk about flexibility?
So when I think about flexibility, I think about it in terms of both the ways that people work and the places and times that people work. And so really I think it's a place where work-life balance starts to come in so that people can work, but yet they have the flexibility to drop off their kids at school or pick them up at the end of the day, to shift work to a different location or even potentially a different time and still meet the needs of the organization. And I think it requires flexibility on both parts, open minds on both parts of the employees and the employer. But I also believe that people have to think outside of the box and understand that if there's a will, there's a way, and that you can work differently and meet the needs of your employees and the business at the same time.
Well, I was so excited to ask you this question in particular. DCP Midstream has jobs that have to be done in the field, right? They have jobs that can be done from home. So how are you, your company, great company, embracing this hybrid situation we're in right now?
Yes, it's another really good question because you don't want to have a bifurcated workforce, but yet many of us do by the nature of the jobs, whether you're out in the field supporting operations or you're in a corporate office and supporting all the infrastructure work that happens with finance and HR and and legal, etc. And so I think the challenge is to meet the jobs where they're at. And so, for example, out in the field, our folks might work a different kind of flexible schedule. An example being they might work 12, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. They might work 12-hour shifts. They might have different hours that they work, but it gives them a different level of flexibility to have a certain number of days off because they've worked a certain number of days in the row. And so it looks different in the different workforces.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, there's a way to accommodate a lot of different kinds of jobs that you have, whether it demands that you're there at a certain time in a certain place, or there's flexibility around that. And I think employers just have to get smart and think outside of the box and figure out how can you meet whatever workforce you're working with where they're at and what they need and what works for them.
Mm-hmm. Which I 100% agree with. And I always have believed that fairness is not necessarily sameness. So how do, you have a very large organization, and for people trying to learn from this, so you have people working in positions that traditionally could work from home. You have positions that could traditionally work, that work in the field or off site and have to be at that location. Can you dig just a little bit deeper in what you have done from a learning perspective?
Yes, I would say that if you were to say we have two different workforces, we have the corporate staff workforce in an office, usually, more your typical 8 to 5 types of roles, and then you have your field folks. I think it's easy to meet them in different ways because they come to the table with a different set of expectations. Our folks that work out in the field know that they have to be at a gas plant or a processing location because that's where the work has to be done. It's specific to the product that we deliver. And they come to the table or to employment understanding that I'm going to be out in the field, I'm going to be working, some schedule, but it's going to require me to be in a place or traveling in between places, versus the folks that are in the corporate space that come with a different level of expectations today, especially as the being flexible about flexibility scene has continued to evolve. And so it's been fairly easy for us, I think, to meet people where they're at because we also understand that they come with a different set of expectations about the role that they'll be performing in the organization.
Well, I'm so glad it's been easy because it's so hard for so many companies out there. And what would you say to companies that are really, they have the opportunity to meet people where they need to be met, but choose not to? They just want and believe that everybody should be on site regardless of their position. What would you say to them?
So I would say that you're going to miss an opportunity to hire some really fantastic talent, for one. Because somebody else will offer it. I will also preface my remarks with there is great benefit from collaboration. So while we are flexible about flexibility, we do encourage people to come together and innovate and create together because it's a building process. One idea from one person gets added to from somebody else. And pretty soon what started as, one spark of innovation becomes a great big benefit to the company because great minds have all gotten involved together. And so I do believe strongly in the power of coming together and connecting and creating, co-creating together. But at the same time, there is a great deal of work that can be done and doesn't necessitate somebody being in a specific location. One of the arguments that I make is just because I have people working right outside my office several cubes away, I don't necessarily know what they're doing. They could, for all I know, be in their office watching YouTube. Now, I don't believe that they are, but it doesn't matter. And so when people say, well, how do you measure productivity if they're not there? And I say to that, I measure productivity the same way I measured when they are in the office. We have agreed upon a set of deliverables and expectations, and we measure it just as if they were sitting right inside here. It's interesting because since we have returned from COVID, and even during the COVID years, we've had our best years of performance as an organization with our flexibility programs in place. I think the numbers speak for themselves.
Oh, I completely agree. And congratulations, by the way, um, because that just speaks to your own innovation and openness to helping people, come back however they want to come back. I was talking to a roofing company this morning, and it is a 38-year-old roofing company, and they just really have a belief system that everybody has to come into the office, work together in order to build culture, because they have a belief system that if you're not together physically, you cannot build culture. What would you say about that?
So we've done a tremendous amount of culture work. Some of it were small actions that had a bigger impact that we leveraged. Some were very big, culturally deliberate actions that we've taken. And from that, we have a clear definition of what our cultural hallmarks are at this company. And one of those hallmarks is connect. So we believe very strongly in the power of connection, but it also doesn't mean that you all have to be together 5 days a week, 40 plus hours a week in order to leverage that connectivity with one another. I think that people just have to realize that there's a lot of time in a work week where you're in an office and your head's down and you're working on your own stuff, absent a great deal of connectivity. And there are other times when you're connecting with people. And so to require everybody to be in the space 40 plus hours a week when a great deal amount of work doesn't require connectivity, I think is where it starts to unravel for people.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree. And that's why your values include trust.
Exactly. And our culture hallmarks, the very first values start with trust. And so it means trust and be trusted. And as we all know, that's earned, right? So we all earn trust from one another. But that carries us through the rest of our hallmarks. And if it starts with trust and we extend that and we receive it and we assume good intent and all the things that most of us would want as individuals for ourselves, if we extend that to others, then I think you're creating a foundation that allows people to understand and make choices about when can I be heads down and working on my own. And that means I can do it from, my coffee, my kitchen table or my office at home or somewhere else besides in my cube or in my office. And when do I need to be in there? Because I need to make connections and I need to collaborate with people, and my end product will be better as a result of others on the team contributing. And part of that is trusting when our employees know which situation is appropriate for them to work in, at home or in the office.
That's beautiful. Tell me about the 3 other organization-wide values you have, since we already touched on trust and connect.
Yeah, so and they're ordered really appropriately. And by the way, these were built by our people. We, I think culture is for the people and therefore it should be by the people. And I think most organizations would tend to say, I'm going to talk to my senior leadership in the company and have them decide what culture they want. And we didn't take that approach. We started with some small things that happened along the way that had an impact on culture, a positive impact, until we got to a point where we said, let's just go all in. Let's deep dive in culture. Let's find out what our employees want in how they would describe their ideal culture. And so we did a very deliberate exercise where we asked people and put them through a process that helped them to describe what they wanted. And the outputs of that was distilled from thousands of inputs into 5 words. And those 5 words are trust, connect, inspire, solve, and achieve. And the order of those is perfect, right? It starts with trust. You trust one another. It enables you to connect with one another. If you connect with one another in your work, hopefully you're inspired by what you're doing and you're able to solve old problems in new ways. And if you're able to do those four things, then the results are going to be great, and you're going to achieve all your expectations for the organization and then some.
And for yourself.
And for yourself, that's right.
Because we all come to work wanting to build a better life for our families.
Absolutely.
And so when the company achieves, we all achieve. So
We all win.
Yes, when all boats rise, right? All boats rise. I think that's wonderful. I love the work that you've done here, and I love the formula by which you organize them, because everything does begin with trust. And I see a crisis out there in trust from employees to employers. I feel as though we have been trained not to trust each other. So how can people bridge that gap?
Oh my, this is a tough question. I do, I'm going to revert back. It goes back to what kind of company you are, and you hire great people. You entrust them to do the work that is required of them, and they in return trust you to take care of them as an employee of the organization. It's a mutual give and take, and I'm sure for some organizations that is not easy. I would say we are very blessed to have an organization that it has evolved over time and has become very easy to trust one another, to do the right thing, to do their best for the business, and to achieve and experience the fruits of our labor. So it's hard for me to go back to a time where there wasn't trust in an organization, because I'm so fortunate to live in this organization that is built on trust and connection with the employees.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it's very different at DCP than the other companies you enjoyed?
I think there are definitely different cultures that are more progressive and innovative and have different sets of freedom. And I think there are cultures that are more traditional and have a different level of employee-employer expectation.
Yes, and I see that too. I see that your very first value is so important to break through. I see that most people returning to the workforce or engaged in a current position, they really want flexibility and trust. And those definitions are different to every human, whether you're a C-suite executive, a VP, a director, somebody working out in the field. And we have to break through and really understand what flexibility and trust mean to everyone in our organization. Because you said it really well earlier, there's clear deliverables and expectations. And when an employee breaks those with a company, then there has to be another kind of conversation.
That's exactly right. So, with the process of providing flexibility doesn't mean you lose accountability. It's the foundation of the relationship, right? And I find it surprising, because people have asked me, well, how do you measure performance, when you have people working from home? And to me, the answer is simple. I measure it the same way I did when they were in the office every day. Did they deliver on the responsibilities of their role and the expectations that we provided for them? And that's no different whether I can put eyes on them, Monday through Friday, every day of the week, or not. I know whether things got done that needed to be done, or whether they did not, or whether they were not done as well as they should have been.
Exactly. That is a wonderful phrase. Flexibility doesn't necessarily mean loss of accountability. And I think that's what business owners, business leaders fear.
It is. And I think it's incumbent on employees that are asking for flexibility to be accountable and to continue to build on that trust.
All boils down to a good old-fashioned relationship.
It absolutely does.
Do what you say you're going to do, and then we're going to be fine. Both ways, employer and employee.
It is a two-way street, but we are all driving down. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, now is as good a time as any to take a break, but coming up in the second part of my talk with Tamara Bray, the Chief Human Resources Officer of DCP Midstream, Tamara shares some advice on how HR leaders can win a seat at the table.
We just need to lean in and say, we have ideas that are going to benefit the business. Here's how it's going to benefit us. Are you on board, yes or no? You can bring forward ideas that the leaders can say, ooh, I see how this can help us to get talent, help us to keep talent, help us to deliver results. Then it's hard for them to say no.
This has been Dare to Care in the Workplace. To connect with Kathleen, go to KathleenQuinnBotaw.com. Kathleen's book, Dare to Care, is available wherever books are sold. Dare to Care in the Workplace is a production of Forbes Books.